Having a baby can definitely be expensive, and one of the largest expenses that you can expect is your hospital stay for labor and delivery. I recently had a baby myself a few months ago and have finally received all of my bills for the hospital and labor and delivery. So today I'm going to be breaking it down and showing you how much it actually cost me to have a baby. Hey guys, I'm Marissa and welcome back to my channel. Here on my channel we talk about life and budgeting, and I love to encourage you that you can enjoy life while still accomplishing financial goals. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, I would love to have you as part of my YouTube family. You can scroll down and hit that subscribe button. So I had my son Peter in May, and he is our very first baby. And throughout my pregnancy journey, I realized how confusing it really can be to plan for the expense of labor and delivery at the hospital. So I decided that throughout my entire pregnancy journey, I would be recording how much it was costing me in all aspects of pregnancy and preparing to have a baby. I actually have a course called Budgeting for Baby where I share everything that you can expect when planning your finances for having a baby, medical costs included. I will have a link to that course down in the description box below, so you can check it out if you're interested. Basically, I'm so obsessed with budgeting and also finding ways that I can save money on things. So in this course, I share everything that you may need to budget for when you are preparing to have a baby, and also ways that you can save money on these costs, because I know people will say that having a baby is so expensive, and it can be, but it doesn't have to be. So I'm sharing all my tips and tricks of how you can save money on that there. But one thing that I was so confused on during my pregnancy was trying to figure out how much it was actually going to cost me to have a baby. If you live in the United States, then you probably have health insurance, and trying to figure out how much a hospital stay is going to cost after your insurance can be very confusing. So while I'm going to be sharing how much it cost me overall, obviously this is going to vary depending on what kind of delivery you have, where you live, what your insurance plan is like. My biggest recommendation for you to figure out how much this is going to cost and plan for it in your finances is to reach out to your insurance company, because they can answer a lot of questions for you. For me personally, I actually called the hospital to try and figure out how much a labor and delivery would cost, but then it's so hard because they don't know what my insurance is. So I actually ended up calling my insurance company and I told them which hospital I plan to deliver at. And because they are a large insurance company, they've had other patients who have had deliveries at this hospital, so they're able to figure out how much an average delivery would cost, and then with my insurance plan, how much I would be paying afterward. So that really helped me get a good estimate of how much I would expect to pay. And that's definitely my recommendation for you if you're trying to figure out exactly how much it will cost you for labor and delivery. Also, in my Budgeting for Baby course, I have a whole section on questions that you should be asking your insurance company to make sure that you have all of the knowledge of what's going to be covered, what's not, and understanding how much these hospital bills and doctor's visits are actually going to cost you in total. Because again, this is like the largest expense that you're going to be spending money on probably for having a baby, and also the most confusing. So in the course, I break all of that down for you as well. So it is now September and I've officially received almost all of my bills. I'm still waiting on one more, but I know how much it's going to cost. So it definitely takes some time, May to September. Like, it definitely took a lot of time for them to actually send me all the bills for this, but I've been using my medical bill tracker. This is a worksheet that is in my Budgeting for Baby course. I also have a Budgeting for Baby workbook, and this page is included in the workbook along with an insurance questionnaire of things that you want to ask your insurance company. And the workbook you can purchase separate, but it does come included in the course. So I'll have the workbook individually linked below if you're just interested in the workbook and not the course. So last little plug there, but just to let you know, this is the worksheet that I'm using to track all my medical bills. So with this medical bill tracker worksheet, you can write down the vendor who you owe money to, and then the description what that bill is for, then the amount that is due, the due date, and then also check off if you've paid it. Having a medical bill tracker like this is super helpful because you will receive many different bills throughout your pregnancy and also for labor and delivery. And it's really good to make sure that you're keeping track of them, to make sure each of them gets paid. I was totally expecting that I would just receive like one bill from the hospital, but even though all these services took place at the hospital, I received different bills from all these different vendors. So having a place where I could record it and make sure that I was paying it all on time was very important. So this is what I have set up for you in that workbook. Okay, let's just talk about that big bill first. The biggest bill that I had was for labor and delivery from my hospital. So the total bill for labor and delivery was $11,504 about, and after insurance I had to pay $2,201.04. I requested an itemized bill so I could see how much everything was costing me, which was very interesting to get like the full breakdown. So I did have a vaginal delivery and I did have an epidural, and I stayed 2 days in the hospital after delivery. I went into labor on my own and I did not have to be induced. So just to give you a glance as to how much this cost for my particular kind of birth. Some of my favorite things here listed on the bill is that ibuprofen, every time they give me ibuprofen, it cost $13.24. And because I gave birth in May of 2020, you know, the virus is going around, so I had to be tested when I showed up to the hospital, and I thought that all of that testing was supposed to be free, and for me, they charged me $125 for the rapid test for that, which I'm not gonna fight it because this bill was $11,000, $125 of it doesn't really matter, and I also hit my max out of pocket for my insurance because of this, so it really didn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but I just thought that was interesting. So there's a lot of medical terminology on this itemized breakdown, but the biggest expenses on this itemized bill were just the room and board for staying in the hospital itself is so expensive. My room alone was over $3,100 a night. Now, I could think of a lot better places that I could vacation and spend $3,100 a night. Besides that, there's a lot of medicine costs that are here on my itemized bill, and a few hourly charges for, I think, like how long I was in labor for, and the official delivery. But the biggest bulk of this itemized bill was definitely just the room and board of staying in the hospital. The next bill that I had was my fee for my OBGYN. So she has a separate practice, and she's the one who I saw the entire time during my pregnancy. So for all of my prenatal appointments, and her fee for delivery, my bill ended up being $5,296, but after insurance, I only had to pay $205.49. So this was actually the bill where I hit my max out of pocket. So my max out of pocket was $3,500 for my insurance, and after a few bills, I ended up reaching that, so that's why I only had to pay $205 for this bill because insurance picked up the rest. So basically your max out of pocket means you don't have to pay anything else after that. Insurance will cover every other dollar. So basically when I was planning to have a baby, I was planning that I would reach my max out of pocket, and that was a nice way to cap off to be like, I only have to budget for $3,500 and then everything else is going to be covered. The next expense that I had was my epidurals. The epidural, that came in as a separate bill, which I expected that it would all be on the hospital bill, but it was not. So the epidural was $3,960 before insurance, but I ended up paying $493.68 after insurance. And I will tell you, it was definitely worth it. Very glad that I got an epidural. And the last bill that was for me was for lactation. So we ended up having some feeding issues at the beginning of Peter's life, and we were having some latch and suck issues and everything. So we went to a lactation consultant at the hospital. I think we went 4 times. And those bills together ended up being $704, but after insurance, I paid $526.72. So all of those bills combined that I've talked about so far, that reached my max out of pocket of $3,500. And the lactation appointments seemed very expensive, but I knew I was going to hit my max out of pocket anyway, so why not? Because I'd end up paying $3,500 anyway. The next bills that I'm going to share are for my son Peter. So I was actually on a different insurance plan than my son at the time of birth, so our insurances got billed separately. So Peter's stay at the hospital charged him $4,992.14. But after our insurance, we ended up owing $1,088.55. Basically, the largest charges on Peter's bill were also just the room and board of staying in the hospital. We then had 2 pediatricians come and check Peter out before we left, and this wasn't our pediatrician who we now visit. So this was the other interesting thing. They came from different clinics and sent bills to my house, and I figured that it would all just come from the hospital. No, it did not. They came from these pediatricians' clinics that are outside of the hospital. So one pediatrician was $241, and I ended up paying $202.72. And then the second pediatrician was $196, and I ended up paying $174.96. So these were just obscure little bills. I was not expecting that we'd get charged additionally for this, and also thought that my insurance would cover it. And it did not, so it was very random to me. But all that to be said, we definitely did have some costs for Peter. All of his costs together were about $1,400 for his stay in the hospital and those little pediatrician visits, which again, they just came to visit him in the hospital. They basically looked him over and said, "Your baby looks great, see ya," and left and charged me, $200. So as a grand total before insurance for the cost of myself and my son for all labor and delivery, it cost us $26,893.09, which was a lot, but thankfully we do have insurance, so after insurance it only cost us $4,893.16. So we reached the max out of pocket for my insurance plan, which was $3,500, and then we also had to pay additional for my son Peter. We reached the deductible for him, which was $1,000, but we did not reach the max out of pocket. So after the deductible, then insurance takes over and they will pay a larger portion and we pay a smaller portion up until I'd reach a max out of pocket, which we didn't have to reach for Peter. So those are the real numbers, how much we ended up being charged for labor and delivery for the birth of my son. It's definitely such a confusing thing with insurance, but I hope that this gave a little bit of insight. I definitely recommend calling your insurance company to get an estimate of how much a labor and delivery would cost, and also know the questions that you need to ask your insurance company to make sure that you can plan out your budget for these expenses. Again, I will have linked below my budgeting for baby course and also the workbook so that you can use this handy medical bill tracker and also that awesome insurance questionnaire so you can ask all the right questions for your insurance company to make sure that you fully understand the costs that you are planning to incur with having a baby. So if you want to learn more about budgeting for having a baby, I have a playlist here where you can check out those videos, and I will look forward to seeing you there. Bye guys.
Did you ever stop and think